Hello and welcome to the Gonzalez Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell, and today we have Captain Rob back on. Uh, Rob Newberry, how you doing?
Doing fine, Clay. Too bad that Patrick can't be with us, but he's with us in spirit.
He's with us as always, my
Yeah.
friend.
Yes.
Well, now we're almost 4 weeks into oyster season. We or 8 weeks into oyster season, isn't it?
He started the 1st October. Yeah, we're a little over
Yeah, yeah,
4 weeks.
yeah, yeah. There's my mind. 8 weeks into oyster season. Uh, Seems to be a plenty of oyster out there. I've gotten them a few times from my buddy down here, Jason Baker, and they're awesome.
Yeah, they're. I
What's
mean, they're doing good. I mean, it's it's all market driven, and we'll see how the market does this year.
Yeah. So what's new in the world of fisheries and watermen, my friend?
Okay, well, I'll start off. I guess start at the beginning. Last year, the Atlantic States Coastal Marine Fisheries Commission, the ASMFC, which is a compact of 16 states from Maine to Florida, uh, put into effect more restrictions on the striped bass coastwide and specifically in the Chesapeake Bay. And when they did the Chesapeake Bay, our charter boat captains and our commercial guys, they wanted to do a 7% reduction on the commercial fishery and then had to come up with some ideas of how to reduce the uh, recreational industry, which the charter boats fall under. So when it all came to fruition, the 7% for the commercial fishery, they basically could not do it because they'd already issued the tags for the 2024 season and they couldn't implement it till 2025.
And
So,
for those that don't know, tags are like licenses.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, the tag,
Yeah,
we got to
right,
tag all our fish and electronically report and all that stuff. So
right.
basically, our quota was allocated for that year, and they couldn't do anything with it. But on the recreational and the charter boat size, we were catching 2 fish per man per day, and with only certain days off. And you only got those 2 fish if you electronically reported. Well, they cut it back to 1 fish. So that
Hmm.
was an automatic 50% reduction in what we could catch, each year. And we started looking at it, and we had asked the ASMFC to and our Maryland Department of Natural Resources. They said this is going to cause some severe harm to the industry. I mean, no one's going to come down that's been coming down for years catching, before you catch 3 4 fish. Now it's been 2 for several years. No one's going to come down and spend 600 800 $1,000 a day to catch 1 fish with 6 or 10 people or 12 people.
Right.
And so we asked the department to do that, and they said, no, we can't appeal this. We can't do this. It's going to go through. And in the process, I just said, this is unacceptable. I mean, our guys are going to take an automatic 50% reduction off the top of their season for the year. So it was good enough. We had a very powerful attorney from Washington, D.C., and another law group from here on the shore decided to take this to federal court pro bono, which was great. I mean, this is good that they're doing that. I mean, really,
Hmm.
our organization and the Watermen couldn't afford to go to federal court because you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we
Right.
went to federal court in Baltimore in front of Judge Bennett, and in the process, we were, we filed for a preliminary injunction against ASMFC implementing any regulations because of how they did it. There was no socioeconomic impact study done. There was no, the science was far from being accurate on this. And, we just said, okay, we'll take it to federal court. So we went in front of Judge Bennett. The first thing we argued on was our preliminary injunction, and he denied the preliminary injunction because we had no standing. And that was kind of a head
Uh,
scratcher for us sitting in the room. So, well, wait a minute. We're being affected by this regulation, but we have no standing. I mean, what's wrong with this picture? And he said, you either need to have the governor, the attorney general, or someone from the legislative body step up and be here in court. So, we kind of anticipated it was a waste of time on our part, but the judge let us go through. And in the process, we said, the judge asked us, he said, well, wasn't there a form of an appeal that you could do to ASMFC to see if they could delay it for a year so you could work it into your industry? Because this went effect in January, or really in March, and our season starts in April. So you had a month to go people up that had booked from last year saying, oh, I gave you half a deposit, we can catch 12 fish. Then you got to call them up and say, well, we can only catch 6. And they'll be like, well, we want our money back. And that's what happened. So
Right.
in the process, the judge said that we needed to have the attorney general or the governor or someone from the legislative body there. And we were told by DNR they could not appeal it. Well, the attorney and the CEO of ASMFC said, oh, wait a minute. We were fully waiting for Maryland to appeal this. We would have worked with an appeal on it. DNR's fishery said no. So that we sent a letter to the governor. We sent several letters to the governor. Still to this day, we've heard nothing back from Governor Moore. Then we sent a letter to Anthony Brown, and Anthony Brown basically said he had no interest in doing this and defending us in court because it would harm the department and all this, which was far from the truth, far from the truth. So now we went ahead, and I guess they thought they had won the case. Well, the attorney said, nope, we've had enough of this. We're going to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond. And everybody kind of laughed at us. Even some watermen's groups said, oh, you're wasting your time. You're not going to get anywhere. Well, we also, in the meantime, we tried to file an emergency brief with the Supreme Court to sneak it in because we had that the Chevron Act was on the table at the time, and they had just voted
Hmm.
to take the Chevron, remove the Chevron Act, which was great for us. It affects what we do on the water.
Right.
And so the Supreme Court said, no, we're kind of tied up right now. Once you exhaust your efforts, if you have to, with the Court of Appeals, then we'll hear it. So we could still be going to the Supreme Court in January, which is good if we lose this case on the 11th of December. But what got me, though, is after we had that hearing, the state, Maryland DNR, was found out of compliance because they hadn't done anything to the commercial fishery. They couldn't give them the reduction. So they had an emergency hearing, and the gentleman that's in charge of the striped bass for Maryland asked the commission, and he said, we are appealing the 7% reduction for 2024 because we've already issued the tags. It would cause a major problem. Could you work with us till next year? And they never blinked an eye, and they said, sure, no problem. We'll work with you next year. So this year that, the 7% goes into effect. Well, then I had the question, well, wait a minute. They said they couldn't appeal it because they didn't have the votes, but they appealed it for the commercial, but not for the charter boats or the recreational. So that was kind of there's some hanky panky going on here. But what got me the most is that on the 18th of February in 2023, Governor Wes Moore's staff called me up and wanted to know if I could be at Rise Up Coffee down in Easton, Maryland.
Hmm.
And I said, well, what for? He said, the governor would
Great,
like to meet
great,
with you.
great coffee, by the way.
Oh, it is. It's good coffee.
Yeah.
So I went down there and I was sitting with the news media down there. It's on all the local TV stations, and I'm from the Western Shore. And Governor Moore came in, and his people brought me over, and I met his cabinet, and they were all there, the secretary of this, that, and whatnot. And after Governor Moore was done meeting with the person that owns Rise Up Coffee, he pulled me over, and the high fives, man hugs, all this stuff. That was all great. And he said to me, he said, well, what can we do to help your industry? And I said, Governor, there's two things that can happen if you work with us. Number one, you can work with the industry, making the bay a better, cleaner, more productive place. And he said, what's the or? And I said, we're going to have you in court. And he kind of giggled about that. Like, oh, you're going to take us to court. Well, here we
Yeah.
are in court. But what got me, Clay, he stood me up in front of about 300 people, and he says, where's my captain? Where's my captain? And I raised my hand. He says, stand up, Captain Newberry. And he says, this man has more passion and it's on VOC TV. And if you want, I'll send it to anybody that questions it. He said, this
Right.
man has more passion for the bay than anybody I've met. I will not make any decisions that will adversely affect or do anything for the fisheries on the Delmarva or the state of Maryland till this man sits down with me. We talk about it and he agrees. Well, just to let you know, since that date, February 18th, 2024, I have had zero
Zero.
contact with his administration. No phone calls, no threatening calls, no nothing. So bottom line is he has said that he is not going to leave anybody behind. And I'll tell you right now, there is not a person on this Eastern Shore, regardless if you're a waterman, a farmer, or a common citizen, that do not feel you have not only been left behind, you've been kicked in the behind to be left behind. And it's not good. There's no reason why we should be going to a federal court and spending good people's money. And this pro bono, these attorneys are working very hard, and I've been working hand in hand with them. Why we should be going to federal court to sue a non-government agency. I mean, ASMSC is non-government. They are a compact. And the things we're suing them on are violations of Article 3, Article 5, and the 14th Amendment. They have violated all our constitutional rights. And they basically say, we're exempt from the Constitution. And I said to the attorney when we're standing in the hall, and I said, you said you're exempt from the Constitution? Are you getting on a plane to Russia, buddy? Because evidently, if you don't think you're bound by the Constitution, you're not a citizen of this country, and you need to get out. And I just
Let
walked
me
away.
ask you. Let me ask you this, Rob. When you talk that everybody's cutting back the limits on things, geese down to 30 days, and you talk about the fish. What it because you have firsthand knowledge of all this. Talk about the population of the fish out there, the rockfish and any bait fish and fish in
Well,
general in the Chesapeake Bay.
well,
Are they
there's
there, or are they depleted?
there's two sides of the coin, Clay, and the two sides are you've got the environmental side, and then you've got what I call the primary environmental side, which is the commercial watermen. The commercial watermen are the frontline environmentalists in the bay. They're out there every day. They're not sitting behind a desk. They're not taking vacations. They're not going into meetings. They're out there every day. They see what goes on. The amount of fish that are in this bay right now, and there's a very good saying that we have, is that 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. Anywhere on this planet, 90% of the fish are only in 10% of the water. So you take the bay, 90% of the fish right up where we were born and raised, man, right up there in the Northern Bay. They had fish all summer long. Now they're catching fish everywhere. They're seeing big
Yeah.
fish. They're seeing small fish. Then you have groups that are blaming like omega proteins, that they're taking all the menhaden out and everything else. No, they're not. There's more menhaden out there. These environmental groups have said how clean the bay is and how great the bay is. I dare to have a waterman get on here and say the bay has been clean this summer. They have been running from bad water every day, and still today they are. And this facade that they're putting out, and I was privileged enough to be able to address the ASMFC in Annapolis about 3 weeks ago. And,
Hmm.
we had a bunch of charter boats guys show up, and some commercial guys show up. And a couple delegates got in there, and they said how they're working with the watermen and how they're doing this, which they're not, but they say they are. I got up and told them, they're talking cause and effect, cause and effect. And I said, well, here's the problem you guys have. You're missing the big picture here. Why for the past 6 years have we had a low production of little striped bass, which the state refers to as the young of the year? It's been very low the past 6 years. And I said, you can fact check me on this. I'm not coming up here to spread any BS. I said for the past 6 years, the Conowingo Dam has had major discharges pre, during, and post spawn of the striped bass. I mean, of epic
Hmm.
proportions, over 250,000 cubic feet per second. So the water gets turbid, which means dirty. The fish won't spawn in it. They go other places to spawn. But the other issue is you hear the environmentalist always talking about, oh, the nutrient levels in the bay are so horrible. These farmers, the farmers are polluting the bay and the watermen are taking everything out of it. That's getting flushed down the toilet right now because these people are seeing, after I made this comment, I said, do you realize the toxic pollution we have in the bay? We have got toxic levels of estrogen. We've got toxic levels of caffeine, fluoride, antibiotics, antibacterials, opioids. All that stuff is in the bay. Nothing. I mean, the upper bay is a damn cesspool. I mean, it's a fact. Ask anybody up there. I mean, the city of Baltimore has been operating out of compliance for the past 15 years on a wastewater treatment plant since December 1st of 2023. Or yes, of 2023. They have dumped over 30 million gallons of untreated waste into the back river, which goes into the bay. No environmental group has said anything except the local group over there. And the only other two groups that are on this is Delmarva Fisheries and the Clean Chesapeake Coalition. It's
I was
absolutely
going to
disgusting.
I was going to ask you that because it seems that I'm from the shore, lifelong shoreman, watermen and farmers sometimes justifiably have been pointed out of doing things wrong. I think 99% of that's been corrected. Farming practices are way different than it was when I was
Right.
growing up. You have the
Yep.
buffer zones and the nutrient management plans and all that. And uh, the watermen with what is it, the power dredging have shown that that's the way to go. That's the way to restore the bay. That's the way
Right.
to grow oysters. But for some reason, you all are never really taken seriously. You might have meetings, you might have be heard, but you're not listened to.
Well,
Uh,
well, the thing
wh-
is Clay, we are referred to as the watermen are referred to as poachers, thieves, crooks, criminals, drug addicts, all this. Farmers, are putting so much nutrients on it's washing into the bay. Well, first of all, to go to the farmer side of it, years ago when we used to put chicken manure on, they paid you to take it off the farm. They had to get rid of it. Well, now it's about thirty
right,
dollars a ton. I don't think there's a farmer
right,
with a brain in his head that's going to waste it. All right. Now we do also foliar feeding that we put on the plants when the plants suck all of it up. We've got everything's
right,
almost all no-till anymore. We've got buffer zones. And on the waterman side of it, what we have done in restoring the bay for oysters is 100 times better than what these environmental groups do. I mean, it's been proven that all the areas of the top producing spat areas, which spat are baby oysters and the small oysters, are all on areas that are being worked. And I mean, not just worked, but pounded. They're growing oysters like crazy. The areas of the sanctuaries that they took from us, they took 50%, they took 25% of our productive bottom, which was 50% of our bottom under the Martin O'Malley administration.
right, right,
We couldn't get it back because Senator Elfwith put in bills. We can't touch sanctuaries. We can't do this. Well, the amount of money they put into the sanctuaries is ludicrous. Hundreds of millions of dollars. They have ruined rivers. Even the DNR's report shows that the majority of the sanctuaries aren't working. They're not working. They're not producing. I mean, we were told by Tom O'Connell from DNR under the O'Malley administration, you guys are going to beg for more sanctuaries. No, we want to take the sanctuaries over so we can get them to start growing oysters. And it's just disgusting to see what's going on. And one of the biggest factors, we have a shell problem. We harvested our best year. We had 700,000 bushels of shells. The majority of that went down to one person down in Virginia and
yeah.
at Bevan's Oyster Company. Well, we only got 110,000 bushels back that year, so we didn't even get a seventh of what we put out. And so that's, we don't have the shell to put back. So what did we have to do? Well, there's an area in the Northern Bay called Man of War Shoals, which has been
Right.
approved by every alphabetical agency in the state, the federal government, the permits there. All we need to do is get the approval of the Board of Public Works. The environmentalists held it up under Larry Hogan. Now they're holding it up under Wes Moore. They don't
And
want
the
to see
Man,
Man of War.
just so people that don't know, the Man of War Shoal is that prehistoric po- depository of all of these old oyster shells that could
Yep.
be used to produce
Yep.
spat and be used in other areas of the bay to clean it up.
Oh yeah, I
And
mean definitely. And so what we had to do now, the environmentalists said it's a great place to fish and all this. I've been in the charter business 43 years of my life, and I have never caught a stripe. Maybe by accident, I caught a striped bass on Man o' War Shoals. It's a good place to catch white perch and catfish. That's about it. You can't set crab pots on it. It's not a crabbing area. But these
right,
environmentalists said it's funny. They said, well, it's a three-dimensional bar. This three-dimensional, they don't call them bars anymore. They're called reefs. I've never worked on an oyster reef. I've worked on oyster rock and oyster bottom and oyster bars, not a reef. So it's three
right,
dimensional, but they're saying it's three dimensional. Well, I've gone and done all the tracking on there, and there is no three dimensional. It goes from 30 feet up to 15 to 8 to 10 feet and then falls off. It's rounded and smooth. There is no hills and valleys and all this. And then then they sat there and said, well, if you expose these oyster shells to oxygen, they'll disintegrate. And I scratched my head and I asked the young lady from the Bay Foundation, they've been there 10 million years and they've had oxygen on them for 10 million years and they're still there. So what are you talking about? oh, well. So it was just, just more delay. But so what we've had to do here, and this is an embarrassment to the state of Maryland. Some gentleman down in Dorchester County got hooked up with an oyster company all the way up on the west coast of Washington State, over 3,000 miles from Maryland. They had piles of oysters 3 times the size of the Capitol building in Annapolis, saying, we don't use them. We grind them up and put them on parkways, backfill dumps with them. So they gave them to them. They shipped 100,000 bushels to Maryland and put them in the water, which was more than we got from less than a 2-hour car, 3-hour car drive. So here we
Right.
have a group that has gone out on the limb, going clear to the West Coast to buy oyster shell to bring it back here when it's sitting right in the middle of the bay and it's not doing anything. It's under mud right now. It's not growing oysters. DNR hasn't found a living oyster on it in 12 years. They do the survey every year. They never find anything. And it's just, this administration and what they're doing to the Eastern Shore and to the seafood industry and to the farmers. My prediction is if we don't do a 180-degree turnaround with this new administration coming in federally, which I think you're going to see big time, because we are, and this is a heads up to everybody, Delmarva Fisheries, Clean Chesapeake, and the Watermen will have a direct connection to the White House. Guarantee it. Guarantee it.
What can people do, Rob, to help your organization out? Because I can tell, everybody can tell you're passionate about this, but what can people do, Waterman and anybody else, especially here on the Eastern Shore, to help your organization out coming up into the new session and with the new federal, the President Trump's administration coming in?
Well, I
What
think
can be done to help you?
what the public has to be made aware of is the amount of waste, and this is what we've already had a discussion yesterday, as a matter of fact, with some people in the Trump administration. They wanted to lay out what we referred to as the waste, and I'll give you a prime example. In 1960 to 2006, we had a program called the Oyster Replenishment Program. There was $48 million of taxpayers' money spent doing that program for 46 years. Well, the environmentalists put this, one of their famous spins on it. Well, it was a waste of $48 million. So I raised my hand at the meeting. I said, ho, wait a minute. Are you reading the other side of the paper here now that the DGS and the Attorney General and the Comptroller did? During that time, there was $48 million of state revenue spent. There was a profit on that $48 million of $332 million. And everybody's jaw dropped. Well, what was the profit? I said, came from the $1 a bushel tax. We harvested over 1 billion oysters during that time. The
Mhm.
bay was cleaner and everything. Since 2006, when the environmentalists shut it down because it was working, it's not going to go. So we get to where the public can get in. They can be made aware about how important Man of War Shoals is. We already own the shells. We don't have to buy them from anybody. We just got to pay someone to dig them. And the state knows that and everything. I mean, Governor Hogan was great on this, but sitting on the Board of Public Works with him was Peter Francho, and the other they wouldn't have anything to do with it. They said they were funded and donated to by the environmental groups heavily. So what the biggest thing you've got to look at is the farce that they're putting out. When they take there's a group down in Dorchester County called Horn Point Laboratories, which is this, I call it the black hole of the oyster industry. It's like $8
Mhm.
million a year budget and all this stuff. Well, they take shell and they put spat on it, which are larval oysters. And then they let them sit for a couple days, and then they put them on boats and they go out and they blow them over with these 2-inch water cannons, or they have the Bay Foundation has some spreader rig that looks like a manure spreader on the front of the boat.
Right. Yeah. I've seen
Well,
it.
the
Yep.
state of Maryland lab in Solomon's Island has already done the report. The um, the amount of oysters, they did a study to see what the survivability was rate. The mortality rate on oyster larvae that comes out of these hatcheries is average of 95, can be as high as 98 to 100%. So the
Mm.
state is spending hundreds of millions of dollars of your taxpayer money. All right, it's $38 a bushel. Say round it to 40. So if you're only getting 5% back, so that $40 investment, you're getting $2. That's not a very good investment. Go put $100 in the bank and go back and get $2 back the next day.
$2 out.
You're going to get a little mad. You're going to get a little mad.
Right.
So the way the watermen were doing it, we took shell from the northern bay, went down to the southern bay where the good spat counts are because there's no pollution down there like there is up here. We brought those oysters back after a year when they're the size of a quarter or a $half or an inch long and planted them everywhere. Swan Point, Hackett's, 6 foot, 7 foot knoll, Snake Rip, all those areas, Love Point. We planted them. I know you can remember seeing all the boats in Rock Hall back in the years. The entire southern bay came up here until after New Year's and oystered, and then went down and oystered when they finished up home. Since then,
Right.
there's been no oysters landed up in this northern bay other than projects we've done where we've planted them and proved it would work. But the fact is, the amount of waste, and this is what we talked to about with the people on the staff of this new government office of was it the one that Elon Musk and
Yeah. Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE. And we told them, they said, right now there's $300 million sitting in the, of all things, the farm bill, which we haven't had in 2 years because these guys have been dragging their can like an anchor. And so there's 300 million sitting in this farm bill, and these environmentalists are like this right now. Oh, we can't wait to get this money. Well, out of that 300 million, my prediction is less than 6 million will go into oysters. All the rest is going to be studies, surveys, all this stuff that have been done for hundreds of years. And it's ludicrous. So basically what we're saying to this administration that's in effect now is don't kill the funding, put the funding where it works, where it can work. And I made a comment to one of their staff members, and I said, when your roof caves in, you don't call a dentist, you call a roofer. When your car's not running, you don't go to the corner store and get the guy making coffee to fix your car. You go to a mechanic. So if you want to bring oysters back, you go to guys that do it, the oystermen. Put the money into where it is. Don't give it to these people that are bleeding, and it's called greenwashing. They paint this pretty picture. It's like, and I'll be point specific. You got the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. They've been here 50 years, and they say, save the bay. Well, I got a bumper sticker on my truck says save the bay with big letters underneath of it and quotes. When? They spent hundreds of millions of dollars of grant money. Well, grant money is tax money. It comes from our taxes that we pay to the government that they disperse out to their agencies that they give them. These people need to go. They haven't been doing, if I have a kid in school and the past 5 years he's been getting D's, there's either one problem. My kid's either dumber than a tire or the school sucks. You either got to kick your kid in the butt or find another school to go to. And that's what we need to do. We need to get these people out of the way. They're sucking money out of our pockets and boning us dry to do the right thing. This bay needs to be saved. We are the stewards of the largest estuary in the Northern Hemisphere. And by this interference that they're doing, as far as this overregulation on the watermen, the overregulation on the farmers, the complete ignorance and ignoring the pollution in the bay, blaming it on the farmers, blaming it on the watermen. You know the old saying, you point your finger at somebody, guess what? You got 3 fingers pointing back at you. So that's the problem.
We're by the clock on the wall, but I think you got to wind it down. I want you to keep in contact with me. We're going to have you back on as session rolls on and as the new administration in Washington comes in to see if there are any changes, good or bad. Uh, you gather all the information, you contact me, and we're going to have you back on and talk about that.
Oh, believe me, there will be some changes. And I don't know. I'll send you a email that I just got back from the new administration, and there are going to be some big changes here. And especially, I would like to see the Eastern Shore because it's dear to you and it's dear to me. And, my father's final resting place is here. Your dad's final resting place is here, and you know damn well that our parents right now would be kicking us in the butt for letting this happen.
Correct.
So,
Rob, I think it's time in the show where we have to say goodbye, Patrick.
Well, I'll say goodbye, Patrick, but Patrick, AMF, buddy. Adios, my friend. Have a good one. And look, have a great Thanksgiving. God bless everybody. Be out safe and eat more seafood.
All right.
All right.